Hi, dear friends, some words of Torah for Parshat Bamidbar. Do you have what it takes to be a Levi? In the course of all the census taking that occurs in our Parsha, we read about an exchange between two populations of Jews. In chapter 3 of our Parsha, Hashem designates the Levites to replace the firstborn males of each family. According to our sages, God's original plan was to have the firstborn son in each family become the minister or priest in the temple. When Bnei Israel sinned with the golden calf, Hashem scrapped that plan and instead chose one tribe, Levi, from among all the others to act as the ministers. Levi was chosen because when Moshe called upon people to help him quell the golden calf insurrection, only the tribe of Levi came en masse to assist him. As a result, the Levites were freed from all mundane work responsibilities, which freed up their time to be the caretakers of the temple and the educators of Torah to the masses. What are we meant to learn from this story of exchange and replacement? The Chizkuni commentary offers a practical sociological reason why God replaced the firstborn with the Levites. In certain ancient cultures, there was a practice to dedicate the firstborn male of the family to the priesthood. This often didn't end well because the firstborn child didn't have any role models in his immediate family from whom he could learn. This led to his performing his priestly duties incorrectly. But when someone comes from a family where the family business is priesthood, there is a greater chance for the young man to learn his trade quickly and efficiently and to perform his tasks correctly from the very outset, learning from the role models in his family. This is why Hashem changed the original plan and took the priesthood from the firstborn and gave it instead to Levi. As far as the Levites being exclusively dedicated to the priesthood and not being allowed to own real estate in Eretz Yisrael, Chizkuni adds that the Levites needed to have delicate hands in order to perform their duties, especially since they were in charge of playing the musical instruments in the temple. If we were to allow a Levi to farm his land, his hands might become calloused and clumsy when tasked to perform the delicate strumming of the harp strings. This explanation as to why Levi was chosen over the firstborn only begs the question: if it's more efficient to have an entire clan of people dedicated to the priesthood, why did Hashem have an original plan for each family to dedicate its firstborn to the priesthood? What was God thinking at first? It seems to me that the Torah is communicating a message of optimal versus practical. It would have been optimal for each family within Klal Yisrael to have had one child representing the rest of the family for the priesthood. This would have made each family feel more connected to temple service and the fully dedicated service of the Leviim and the Kohanim. But this could not work practically, and so the system had to change. Assigning the Levites instead of the firstborn creates more distance between the temple and the average person, but in retrospect, this is what was necessary in the aftermath of the golden calf, when, after all, the Jewish people were guilty of not revering God sufficiently. One message that I take from this replacement comes from observing that the firstborns had their privilege stripped, not because they had done something wrong. In fact, when Moshe called for help to put an end to the golden calf insurrection, the firstborn behaved no differently from everyone else. They simply did nothing. The takeaway is that a person may be destined for greatness, but he must first be prepared to break free from the lethargy of the pack, think for himself, and take the risk of doing the right thing even when no one else is. It's not about doing the wrong thing, but rather failing to do the right thing. To be a leader, this is crucial. Rav Yosef Leiner of the Ishbitz Radzin dynasty made another important observation. There's an inherent difference between firstborns and Levites. The firstborn child represents all of the intense, passionate energy of a newly married couple when procreating and bearing their first child. His spiritual genetics carry his parents' passion within his personality. Optimally, one would wish to take this kind of energy, manifested in the firstborn child, and utilize that kind of personality in the service of the temple. However, it is difficult, as they say, to bottle lightning. Trying to harness the energy and vigor born from this passion can also result in destructive and impulsive results, as was witnessed by the extemporaneous offerings of Aharon's two eldest sons, Nadav and Avihu. The priesthood demands not only full and energetic commitment to divine service, it also requires reverence, conservatism, and caution. The Levites possessed both the commitment to energetically perform their service, but at the same time possessed the characteristic of cautious reverence of Hashem, which allowed them to show some level of restraint in their enthusiastic desire to approach God. As the Ohev Yisrael says, the very name of a firstborn, Bet Chaf Resh Bechor, each one of those letters represents second. The Bet comes after Aleph, the Chaf comes after the Yud, and the Resh comes after the Kuf. They're the second best because of this lack of restraint that is necessary for divine service. The message for all of us before Shavuot is that Judaism contains a constant tension between the old versus the new, the set-in-stone halachic rules versus the excitement of trying something new, the tradition versus the innovation. We were brought close to Mount Sinai, but we were also told to be magbil, the mountain, which means, from the Hebrew, to create boundaries that we were not permitted to go beyond. The days leading up to Shavuot are known as the Shloshet Yemei Hagbala, the 3 days of boundary setting, which is based on the verse in Parshat Yitro. Isn't it curious that we don't instead call these days the Shloshet Yemei Kurva, the 3 days of coming close to the mountain and to God? It's as if coming close to God is our default, our innate nature to return to our source and the source of all life. Our impulses need to be restrained and controlled in order for the holy message of God and the destiny of the Jewish people to be realized. And so, dear friends, let's rejoice that our natural impulse is to be one with God. Let's also apply the lesson of the Levi, that love must be accompanied by reverence of God in our holy tradition. Being a Levi also requires the courage to step forward when no one else will, taking the risk that you will be shunned for daring to be different. If we take these lessons and apply them, we will succeed in receiving the Torah fully once again this Shavuot and reap the great rewards of being Hashem's people headed towards ultimate redemption. May we see it, dear friends, this year with an end to all war, with the return of our hostages. Bimhei Rabbi Amenu Amen. Here's wishing you a Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.